the idea of concubinage is actually there in this verse about polygamy here, where it says, or those that your right hand possess. The idea was that it was possible for you to take your slave women as wives. And this, of course, I mean, one of the things you have to think about is Islam didn't invent concubinage. I mean, concubinage is something that was an institution already. But this was something that was permitted. But even within that context of concubinage that did exist in Islam, it's certainly, I mean, when I'm talking about these Ottoman harems, I mean, they're almost all concubines, right? So this case was something that was done in excess by certain rulers. The Ottoman sultans, certain Abbasid caliphs had many, many slave girls. Also, other people could do as well. You didn't have to be at the top of the class, But at the same time, there was a certain set of limits that were placed upon that, which was that if you did take your slave woman as a concubine or as a wife, even if you didn't take her as a wife, you took her as a concubine, and she bore you a child, first of all, that child was completely the child of the father, legitimate, same rights of inheritance as children that were born of a full wife, let's say. And at the same time, upon the death of the master, whoever the slave owner was, that woman was automatically free, because the child is always born free. A child that is born to, if a Muslim man had a concubine and the woman bore him a child, that child is free, right from birth. So it was that kind of a limitation. And it was really, when you think about slavery in the Islamic world in general, it's important to think about it in that kind of slavery is not the kind of slavery exactly as we think. I mean, slavery is slavery from one point of view. But at the same time, in Islam, freeing a slave is a tremendously meritorious act. Muhammad bought many slaves in order to free them, in order to give them their freedom. And if you look at the chapters, if you look at a book of fiqh, of Islamic law, that deal with slavery, it's not called the chapter on slavery. It's always called the chapter on freeing. Because the whole idea was that slavery was you were supposed to move your slaves toward freedom.
But to have a concubine is not fornication.
No, it is not. Because you are legally responsible for her.
But she has no rights like a wife.
She doesn't have the same rights as a wife. That is correct. That is correct. But let's say the offspring that are produced are completely the responsibility of the fathers. And one of the underlying concerns that you can read through many of the different Shari'ite injunctions about marriage is this concern to not have illegitimate children. There shouldn't be any illegitimate children in Islam. And also to not have children who do not have fathers who are responsible for them. So in this particular case, if you had a case of concubinage, the father was responsible completely for that child, as he was for any of his other children, and also responsible for his slave wife as well. I mean, he was also responsible for taking care of her. You had a responsibility to care for your slaves. You had a responsibility. In fact, there are hadith that say that you have to feed your slaves the same food that you eat, and you have to clothe them in the same clothing you wear. So you had a responsibility toward them. It's true that they did not have the same rights as a wife. That is true. But at the same time, you did have a certain set of legal responsibilities, religious responsibilities toward your slave wife and toward the child that they would bear.
Was it possible to sell concubine?
Yes.
So even though they had a child, she could...
No. Once they had a child, he could not sell her. No, yeah. Because she was considered virtually, in a sense,